We have all our friends from the press here. We have our friends from our fellow lay leaders, and I would like to ask Rabbi Nisanoff. I know you have the first question, please. You asked me before, so please pose this.
Oh, prepared.
Oh.
Jeff, he didn't say the first question. He didn't say number one, but thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the OU for bringing this opportunity. Thank the OU for having this opportunity, and it's good to see all our friends who I've met before, and Howard has been helping us many, many times. And one of the things currently, go to the question, New York City provides for non-public schools. We have nurses and books, and every public school also has security. And one of the things is, what is the position on private schools of having security? Because as a father, and when you came, Speaker, you saw that there is a school right up the block. And thank God I have all my boys, so they all go to one school. And we have a little thing about paying for private security on top of the yeshiva tuition. And I just, you know, I spoke to our precinct at 107. They say that currently there is no way to have somebody. And it's like, what is the position to have some kind of security at parochial private schools?
You know, as we talked about a little bit before, as I related to the nurses, I mean, there are areas, and we all know this, where the government cannot get involved in non-public education, but then there are areas that we can, and it's areas where it's responsible, as we did for nurses, to add in. Now, we've heard loud and clear, and David has been as strong an advocate of this as anybody, that this is an area where the non-public schools need help and would like us to work with them. Now, where exactly that's going to end up, how much could we help, how much could we not help, what can fit within the confines of the Blaine Amendment, is that right? Yeah. The Blaine Amendment. I don't know the answer to that, but we would like to work with all of you and others to try to figure that out and see what can be done. So we'd like to work with you and figure out what we could. And Jeff, by work, I'm a little afraid to say that, with Jeff in the room, who seems to have the best rookie year ever I've heard of in Albany, but Jeff, we will follow up, because otherwise I think Jeff will be camping out in front of the office if we don't follow up.
I know where you are. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to ask Stu Baerback. Stu?
I actually asked two questions. One
All right.
about education, one about my own private. I'm an attorney, assigned counsel attorney, and I understand.
Stuart, I can't.
Oh, sorry. My name is Stuart Baerback. I'm the president of Solomon Schechter School of Queens. So I have two questions.
Okay.
One is education. One is outside of this forum.
Okay.
But it involves the city. I'm an assigned counsel attorney in Brooklyn. That's what I do for a living. And I understand the mayor has been seeking to eliminate us, or
Is that like 18B?
18B.
Okay.
So I want to know what your position is on that, because I have to report it back to my colleagues.
Okay.
Secondly, special education is important to me. My wife is a special ed teacher in the city, and she works at a local school, public school. We in Solomon Schechter of Queens have students that need some help. We don't provide it in our school, but I know other schools do. And the city makes you go through a million hula hoops to get help. There's administrative hearings, you fight, you tooth and nail. So the first part of that question is, what would your position about requiring administrative hearings every year for special ed services? And B, the schools that don't provide it, what services would the city be able to give us to help our kids that need some help? Thank you.
You know, David, or Councilman Greenfield, kind of hit the nail on the head when you talked about this before. Every parent basically just about every parent who has a special needs child ends up in court. I don't think that makes any sense at all. It doesn't make any sense at all just from a human perspective, but if that's not compelling enough, as David said, look at the facts. We lose almost every time in court. I mean, it's really a crazy statistic. I can't remember the exact number, but it's like 90+% of the time the parents win. And I think the perspective then really you have to conclude is about a belief you would wear parents down, right? And that some will just say, forget it, I can't take the stress of this anymore. And I know parents who, you know, have run up their credit cards, taken out loans that they really put them in a very long-term challenging position to go through the law part of it, because they have to pay the lawyers. Even if they're going to get the money back later, they need to get it. So I want to move away, very clearly away from forcing special needs parents into court. I don't support that perspective, and all it does is add stress and duress to a family that is already in a stressful situation. But worse than the stress on the parents, it runs the real risk of delaying that child getting the services they need. And one thing we know for sure is early is critical. So if a child loses 6 months, I don't mean to be fatalistic, but that's 6 months they may never get back in their development, because young is so critical. On your second question, I don't quite know the answer. I don't know how that would work within the context of the security question, so we're happy to take a look at that too. I don't honestly know. On 18B, which I will admit was not in my preparatory document for the Orthodox Union meeting today, but you know, that's the glory of New York City politics. That's the no, absolutely. That's the thing. That's the thing you.
Howard, we're going to talk afterwards.
The thing you gotta love about New York politics. You know, Mayor Bloomberg has certainly raised a lot of concerns about 18B lawyers and whether we're getting the best lawyers for folks that way comparative to cost, excuse me. Now, obviously, there's times when legal aid has to have others involved, two defendants, different situations. I don't know where I'll end up on that. It's certainly an issue I want to understand better than I do. It used to be something when Stanley Michaels was in the city council, he talked about a lot. It's not an issue we've talked about a lot recently. So I can't tell you I'll be in the same or different place with the mayor. I do have heard concerns, and I want to say this without offending you and your colleagues. I have heard concerns from some folks that the 18B lawyers, not to the person, but generally are not may not always be as good as the legal aid lawyers.
That's a fact. I know myself. I've tried more cases.
All right.
So it's a
Question that
absolutely, and it is an issue because it has an impact on the budget, and because it has an impact on representation, which people deserve the highest quality of, that we need to look at. And I'd be, you know, would definitely, it's something I'll have to look at as mayor, would want to talk to you and other court-appointed lawyers. Obviously want to talk to legal aid and other folks who are advocates for folks who need representation.
Thank you very much, Stu.
Jeff, I do just want to add, I'm sorry, I think it's important that, you know, we mentioned it before, but I think it bears re-mentioning and recognizing that for me personally, and I really believe that the most important issue in terms of overall that we can make an impact on is this issue of special ed children, who are currently, their families are going through the ringer. And you know, the numbers aren't huge in our community, it's only a few thousand, but the suffering that these folks are going through is unprecedented.
But and citywide the numbers
yeah,
are big though.
yeah.
I mean, this is a citywide issue, I have to tell you.
And so I really just want to recognize, and I think the speaker deserves a big round of applause for taking such a clear, articulate position to stop the madness. And that's really what it is. It's madness and the suffering that parents are going through.
You also, speaker, would look at it in the public school level. I don't think services are adequately provided on that end. The whole special ed system.
I don't
Great.
disagree. No,
Ora,
absolutely.
Ora, you have a question as well?
Oh.
New York City is, as we discussed, the safest big city in the country, and many people, including me, so I've lived here for a long time, thought that when Mayor Bloomberg took over, he couldn't make the city safer, but he did. I know you mentioned that you have specific plans with relation to the police department, but more generally, what are your plans to maintain and increase the safety in the city?
Well, one thing is, I think it's really important to keep the size and patrol strength of the police department as robust as we can. Because remember, we now have police officers fighting traditional crime and fighting terrorism. I mean, we have at least 1,000 officers a day who are focused exclusively on that, and it is a good thing that they are. Now, we were concerned, myself and David and other council members, that with the number of retirements that were coming up, that we had the potential of the strength of the department to decrease this summer by the hundreds. So in the budget process, there was not supposed to be July police class, only a January class. We successfully accelerated the class from January to July, so we will not, when those retirements go into place, have a smaller police department. I also want to go beyond that and increase the size of the police department by about 1,600 police officers. That will not cost us a lot more money, because if you look at the number of officers who are coming up on retirement and they make more than an entering officer, and you do a deeper commitment to civilianization, which is something that we looked at, you end up almost covering the cost of it. So one, it's about the individuals, having enough police officers, and as we have revenues, I would like to go further than that as well in the number of officers. Two, it's also about how better can we use technology to help us, and we've seen that's made a big difference. One of the additions I'm making is the idea of mobile cameras into our camera portfolio. We already put money in the capital budget for this year to start purchasing them. The thing about mobile cameras is, by definition, they move. Therefore, you don't know where they are if you're the criminal. That's going to keep people in kind of a different perspective. I really think that can help us. We also have seen other cities effectively use technology where when a gun is shot, you can use technology to figure out where it happened, where that shot came from. I think it's called Shot Spotter or Shot Stopper or something like that. We've had it worked very, very well in San Francisco. We've had some challenges with that technology in New York, just given our density. I want to work with the tech community and find a way to have that technology used here to help us when there are incidents better track down the perpetrators more quickly. We also obviously need to find ways to use texting and cameras and our ability to take pictures with our phones in a way to get more information to the police more quickly. I think that is really critical moving forward as well to keep our city safe. I also think the best, being as transparent as we can with the police department and getting numbers out there to people so we're in constant conversation about what is going on is really important, and finding ways we can be better coordinated in the police department. Not so long ago, Police Commissioner Kelly, and this is the kind of thing that doesn't get much attention, took all of the various special victims units, which had been by borough, and the domestic violence unit, and put it under one commanding officer. Prior to that, if there was someone committing rapes in northern Manhattan and in the Bronx, you weren't sharing the fact patterns of those crimes. So unless somebody just knew, they didn't know. That's not the case anymore. Also had domestic violence in that unit, which is obviously kind of, there's overlapping things there, et cetera, makes a big difference. Now, I also want to say, one thing I put out recently that I think is look, some people may say it's impossible, but you know what? If you don't put a goal out there, it's certainly not going to happen. We should make New York City a hate crime-free city. We have the best hate crimes task force of any police department in the country. It's not acceptable that this summer I've stood in Williamsburg where mezuzahs were burned. It's not acceptable that not so long after that burning, I was in Greenwich Village where a man was killed because he was gay. It's not acceptable that we had Muslims in New York attacked after the Boston Marathon. We can make New York City the first hate crime-free city in America, and that's what we have to commit to do.
Thank you. I'm going to pass the mic over here. Tamara Eisenstadt, do you have a question?
Thank you. Just want to wish your father all the best for his surgery.
Thank you very much. We got news this morning, thank God, from the hospital that his blood level stabilized, and I'm going to leave from here and go to the hospital. He's going to have his surgery this afternoon. Javier Hernandez is here from the New York Times. He would like it note he thought his story on his surgery was buried. He wasn't happy to be in the trail side column. I told him I felt he should now feel my pain. So.
Just wondering what your thoughts were on changing the public school system.
Well, that's a big question and a very, very, important one. So let me tell you a couple different ideas I have around public schools. One, I'm very proud that, and now when I'm mayor, I might have to take a little of Jeff's time to help get stuff passed in Albany since he's the Rookie of the Year. But without Jeff's help, somehow remarkably, last year we got legislation passed in Albany that come September makes kindergarten mandatory in the 5 boroughs, which is very important. It hadn't been before that. I thought it was, I got to admit. When my staff came in and said, why are we going to pass a bill that But in New York, only Syracuse had it mandatory, and we had 3 to 4% of 5-year-olds that were starting first grade without kindergarten. That'll end. Also, I want to take steps to expand on early childhood education across the city. There are 10,000 more full-day pre-kindergarten spots because of the work of all of us and the city council. I want to go further so we get to a point where all people who want full-day pre-kindergarten get it. We're going to need some legislative change in Albany for that, but we can get it done. Also, and this is going to lose me the 6th grade vote, I want to take steps to make the school day longer. Now, we have some public schools right now in Brooklyn, and the U of T deserves credit for this, where through flexible scheduling, they're doing it without extra money. I don't know that that's a system, I don't know that you could take that system-wide, but we're going to look at it. In September, we're starting a pilot program that's partially funded by the council, partially funded by the DOE, partially funded by Robin Hood in 20 middle schools where reading rates are 3/4 of the students below grade level. We're going to extend the school day by 2 hours there. Do a partnership with Harvard University and Robin Hood, use that extra time for literacy, which will be reading, but will also be art and music and the other kinds of things that we know can help children read better. I want to go beyond that at Mayor and take the 100 lowest performing schools in the city, extend their school day. Once we have a couple of different models, figure out the model we could take and be sustainable across the city. We also need, we need to recognize testing is now part of our life based on the federal government, but we need to not be obsessed with testing. And we need to move away from kind of our obsession with testing. The first way I would do that is advocate in Albany aggressively to end field testing. Now, what field testing is children in all public schools to some level, and in some schools even more, take tests that don't count. What are these tests? They're questions for next year's test. They're actually kind of practicing or marketing or whatever on what next year's test should be. The test company should find a different way to do that that doesn't pull children out of critical class time. I also would immediately, as mayor, conduct something I'd call the citywide success study. You know, Bill Clinton used to say there's nothing wrong with America that what's right with America can't fix. I think there's truth to that in New York City's public school system. There's nothing wrong with our schools that what is right about our schools can't fix. And we have schools, not every school, but we have good schools out there. So let's do a study and document what the programs are that are making some schools succeed. Take that info, take that success, and offer it to principals of other schools so they can replicate that model. They may need extra funding to do it. When we put our middle school quality initiative in place, we picked the 51 lowest performing middle schools. Over 5 years, we got them $25 million more so they could bring more services into their schools. We can find that money by pulling money out of outside contracts in the Department of Education and driving money into the classroom. Now also, both public schools and non-public schools, I want to issue a challenge as mayor. We're the safest big city in America. We're the financial capital of the world. We're going to be very soon the high-tech capital of the world. Let's be the literacy capital of the world. Let's all come together and do that. And come up with the best practices and best models to do that, and there's some that are out there. At New Dorp High School in Staten Island, which is a big high school and a diverse high school, the principal there, Deirdre, she makes literacy part of every class. So when you're in science, you're not just learning about the periodic tables, and memorizing them. You're reading about the scientists who developed them. You're writing essays about them. That simple thing of incorporating reading and writing into every class has had her reading scores go through the roof. We need to do more of that. We also need to recognize that the best way to succeed is everybody working together as a team. That means getting the teachers, the principals, the staff at the table. Stop vilifying teachers. I was so proud 2 years ago that David and I were able to stop the layoffs of 4,100 school teachers, and also to engage parents and bring them to the table. I want to create an online parents university so all the info they need is right there. But I would keep mayoral control. I would not weaken mayoral control because I think it is important in all city agencies to have the buck stop with the mayor, but we need to do a much better job of involving all of the stakeholders and really aggressively welcoming parents in. And changing the special ed will send a big message in welcoming parents in.
Thank you so much,
I just
Master.
want to add, by the way, you should never take the 6th grade vote for granted. My first election, I was running for school president. I thought I had the 6th graders locked down because my cousin was in the class.
And you didn't.
And the vote came back, and we were up until the 6th graders came back, and we lost by 10 votes. And I went to my cousin, and I said, what happened? He said, well, you know, your competitor, he brought us donuts. So every election now.
This is obviously starting for life.
Exactly.
Never take those 6th grade votes for granted.
That's funny.
You've done pretty well after, though, with the votes. So.
Exactly.
I don't want to keep you between you and your father. So I have one more question here
Okay.
before we just go to the members of the press and then
Okay.
get you out of here. Dan Lubovitz has a question.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. Well, first of all, the 6th grade vote. My son is just recently finished 6th grade. He would be very happy the schools get longer in public. He always complained.
Oh, that.
My wife go longer.
There you go.
Thank you. So I'm president of the Solomon Schechter School in Manhattan. So I'm going to ask.
Where is that?
That's 100th and Columbus.
Okay.
So I'm going to. I have a question that Jeff asked, and I have a freelance question because Stu did it. So I figure the Schechter schools can do it. My first question has a lot of the families that go to our school live on the Upper East Side, and so I would like to understand whether you would consider with the 91st Street garbage transfer station finding a more appropriate neighborhood that doesn't literally run right through a playground. So that's my first question. And the second question has to do with transportation infrastructure. There have been a lot of improvements on the surface level, bike lanes, pedestrian plazas, closed streets, et cetera, but not as much attention, I think, to improving the subway system, particularly for those of us who live in the Upper East Side. It's not so easy. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what you as mayor could do on that score as well.
Sure. Let me start with the 91st Street Marine Transfer Station. And just for folks who weren't from the East Side, let me give
I
you.
can answer that one if you'd like.
No, it's okay. Give it a little background. Garbage is an issue in a city, right? We have to deal with our garbage. And for a long time, the city's policy basically on municipal uses where you have to take garbage has been to put them in lower income communities of color. Williamsburg, East Williamsburg has about 12 or 13. For a long time, the city had been trying to pass a new solid waste management plan. And in my first year of speaker, we passed a solid waste management plan, which was an enormous, in my opinion, victory for the council and the mayor and the city of New York. And that plan had a couple of things that it was based on. One, reducing truck traffic, getting trucks off of the road, which is a good thing across the city. I think it's something like 6 million truck miles will be taken off the road because of the solid waste management plan. Part of the way you do that is to use the rivers, to have more barges barging garbage and recyclables out of the city. Two, the plan is based on the premise of borough self-sufficiency, that to the greatest degree possible, every borough and every neighborhood needs to do its fair share taking care of its own garbage and stop the days where all of these uses were put into lower income communities of color. The borough that then had to kind of get the most significant amount of new facilities was Manhattan. When we did this plan, I was adamant, even over the objection of some of the local elected officials in my district, who I have a lot of respect for, that my district would get a facility. And on the Gansevoort Peninsula in the West Village in Manhattan, in the middle of the Hudson River Park, there will be a marine transfer station. And there were times when could have been cut out of the plan. I would not allow it to be cut out of the plan. Now, one of the other places that's going to get it is East 91st Street on the Upper East Side. There used to be garbage facilities there. They'd been closed down, I think, for about 15 years maybe or so, but it had been a garbage-related use up there. And there's tremendous opposition to this, in part because there is a park and a park facility near it. But remember, a good thing is we are now embracing our rivers. We're using them for ferries and mass transportation and parks. So if we're also going to logically use them to reduce truck traffic, there is going to be an intersection. There has been much discussion about the 91st Street facility and many lawsuits filed against it. And look, As I said before, you need to be, if you're a mayor, tough enough to lead and smart enough to listen. But listening doesn't mean we're always going to be in agreement. And I've listened on 91st Street, and we tried endlessly during the process of doing the solid waste management plan to find another site that met the philosophy of the plan that would work. Because look, I'm running for mayor. Do I like that the Upper East Side is mad? No. Who likes to go to the 92nd Street Y and get booed? Nobody, if they're running for mayor. But I can't change core things that I believe. And I believe it's wrong that for all of these years in the city, all of these facilities only went to lower income communities. And I think it's right that we all do as much as we can as it relates to garbage. So we will work to mitigate the impact. We'll work to put community input, but I'm not going to change my position on that. I stand by the plan we passed, and as mayor, I will implement it. I will fight any effort in court to stop the 91st Street transfer station, and we've won every court effort so far. We will, I believe, prevail legally, and there'll be a facility there. As it relates to mass transit, I will share a little bit of a conflict I have about your 2nd Avenue subway on the east side. Is that my father, who we've talked about a little bit, he remembers the day his mother said to him and his brother, "Get out of the house, you're driving me crazy. There's men outside, they're going to build you a new subway, go look at it." So he says he's not dying till he gets to take a ride from the top to the bottom of the 2nd Avenue subway. So
That's a good thing.
yeah, exactly. So I want it done, but maybe not new. No, I'm only kidding. Right, exactly. No, but I want it done. But look, you are 100% right. We've made some good changes. I would add that the East River Ferry that we in the council put in place is another good transportation step, and I want to do more ferries as mayor. We need to do also more bus service, more select bus service, bus rapid transit in the city. That'll help. But we don't talk about subways enough. I will say that the extension of the number 7, which is happening on time, on budget, which is miraculous, is something that we in the council did with the mayor. When we rezoned Hudson Yards, before I was speaker, when I was just a local council member, we knew that neighborhood would never succeed if it didn't have mass transit. So we came up with a financing mechanism that floated bonds and allowed developers to help us fund the extension of the 7. So there are creative ways to do it beyond the MTA, and we need to look for those and seize those opportunities, as the mayor and I did with the number 7. But still, it's not right that we as New York City are the economic engine of the MTA, and to use a car metaphor, the voice we have on the board is that of a piston. That's not right. So as mayor, with Jeff's help in Albany, we're going to pass legislation that will give the mayor, and this falls into the category of be careful what you ask for, gives the mayor the power to appoint the majority of the board members on the MTA and give the rider member a vote, not just a voice, and give the mayor the power to directly appoint the New York City Transit Authority head. That way we'll really begin to look at longer-term projects. And, you know, look, it'd be great to build new subways all over the place. That's probably not going to happen, right? But the bus rapid transit, the select bus service, the ferries, that can happen. But there's other critical issues at the subways that need capital work. The quality of our tracks, the quality of our signals, the elevators. It's an enormous problem for seniors, disabled, young children, people with strollers, that so many of the elevators and escalators in some places aren't working. And we need to have a better plan for that. So it's the big, but the medium big makes a big impact on people's lives too.
I don't envy Jeff his job.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. All right, I want to open it up to members of the press if there are any questions.
You're going to get a mic. Don't get used to it. It won't happen at City Hall. Go ahead. What's
My
your
name's
name?
Josh. I'm a reporter with the Forward, the Jewish Daily Forward. I imagine this may have come up in this room already, but what's your position on tuition assistance for non-public schools?
Tuition assistance?
Yeah.
I would not support tuition assistance. We did have a conversation today about the work I did when I was health committee chair, which passed a law that requires nurses in all schools. I've agreed to take a look at the issue of security moving forward, but tuition assistance is not something I would support.
Hi, my name is Jillian. I'm from the JTA, and it's a little off topic, but we're curious to know your position if you consider the West Bank occupied territory.
Well, that's a very broad question there, so
Well,
give me
in
a little more.
consideration of Anthony Weiner's comments. We were wondering what your comment was.
You know what? I don't know exactly what Congressman Anthony Weiner said or former Congressman Weiner said, so let us take a look at that and get back to you. Justin, who is behind Jeff, give him your number and we'll get back to you.
Thanks. Any more questions? All right. I'd like to turn it over to Maury Litwack to close.
Thank you, Speaker Quinn, and thank you everyone for coming. Very quickly, we get asked all the time by synagogue presidents, synagogue rabbis, day school presidents, day school board members, community leaders, what can we do to bring more resources to our community? What can we do to bring back important state, local, and government resources to our community? And what can we do to remove burdensome regulations to our community? And so we answer that it requires getting involved, and today is the sort of first step for so many people who are in this room, and we thank you for that, coming to events like this and meeting with Speaker Quinn, who we promised a great crowd and a great important group.
And you delivered.
Thank you. And we delivered this crowd here, but this is not the end game is those resources. The end game is that relationship where the elected officials that we work with understand who our community is and what we're all about. And there's a lot more to do, which means there's so many elected officials that the speaker, even if the speaker wants to work with her colleagues or Councilman Greenfield wants to work with his colleagues, they need them to know what our community is all about. We can only do so many of these meetings. So we need a lot of one-on-one time with community leaders, interacting with politicians, conveying the importance of this message and the things we talked about, whether it's security funding or special needs funding. And so we have, fortunately for you, the OU Advocacy Center has staff members such as Ahava Bierman, who's right there, raise your hand, Yay. Jeff Leb right here from the New York, who's director of New York policy, or myself, and we are happy and want to work with every single member of this room to assign you those politicians, bring those politicians to your communities, to your schools, and you can check out any of that work at ouadvocacy.org. Otherwise, grab anybody in this room. We want to work with you. If you like the work that we're doing here, there's a lot more to do. We thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.